Hey, it's NOOCH, and it's time to rank the towers in LEGO Star Wars Battles. We've already ranked the legendaries. We've given the top 5 dark side and light side units. We're going to have a whole separate video on the one-shots and the droids. But what about the towers? The towers, you have to have them on the field to win. Literally, your score is based on how many towers you have on the field, unless you kill the enemy's main tower, their X-Wing or TIE Fighter. So let's get into the towers. We're going to rank them bottom to top and talk about everything. So starting off, we have the Turbo Laser. The Turbo Laser is described in-game as a beginning tower. And maybe 3 weeks ago, it was a little interesting because the Turbo Laser for a long time cost 4 energy to place. They reduced the cost to 3 energy because, it's not a high-performing tower. It's just kind of there as a sacrificial. It's like a meat shield. And with reducing that tower to 3 energy, it still sucks. It's just no good. The thing is the worst tower in the game. You put it up, it can't defend against swarms, it can't defend against legendaries. It does a very poor job against tanky units like the flamethrower or Chewie or a super battle droid. It's just not a good tower. It is very bad. At the beginning of the game, it's maybe all you got, so you got to play with it until you get the flame towers or some spawners, anything else. The turbo laser should be the last tower you place in the field, and that's why it's ranked number 6. So coming in at number 5 is the missile launcher. Now, missile launchers are actually usable in events, but there's still a little bit of struggle. You've still got to master it, and it's got to be played correctly to win. There's an art and a nuance to it. In regular planetary battle, NOOCH did find a defense strategy for it, but it took a lot of work and it wasn't 100% successful. It's really challenging. These towers don't have enough health, even though they added some more health for them recently. They're very vulnerable to melee attacks. Their range is a minimum of 6, so anything that's inside a range of 5 or less, it's not going to be able to fire at those units. Plus, if you have a tower and there's another tower in the layer next up above it, it's going to lock on that tower so you can drop units anywhere you want around it to attack that missile launcher. So there are ways to use the missile launcher. It's just really challenging, and you really got to be on your game to use it properly, and that's why it comes in at number 5. Coming in at number 4, the Battle Droid Factory. Now, we split up the spawners because they have a different cost and they do a little bit different things. So the Battle Droid Factory spawns 1 Battle Droid about every second. It only costs 3 energy, and NOOCH feels that that's its biggest benefit. It costs 3 energy, and a lot of times you can kind of, depending on the skill level of your opponent, you might be able to lure them into using a bomber on it. And they're thinking, hey, I gotta get rid of this tower because it's going to put too much pressure on me. But if they spend a 4 energy bomber to get rid of a 3 energy spawning tower, that's probably a 5 to 3 loss for them. NOOCH feels that the fact that this tower spawns and the bomber's a one-shot actually adds a little bit of value to the spawning tower. Now, at its base, the Battle Droid Factory isn't great. It needs to be there as support for your other units, because those battle droids, I think maybe the only tower they get a shot in on. No, I don't think they get a shot in on any tower. I don't think any other. I know the particle beam handles them. I believe the turbo laser kills the one battle droid. The flame tower, it might get a shot against the flame tower. And so really, it's not going to get that battle droid marching down the field is not going to get a shot off against any unit except unless it's being tanked for. So if you got other units in front of it, and it can assist. It can be a support to units in front of it. And if you had those support units down in front, then those Battle Droid Factories can really put some pressure. They really need stuff in front of them to start putting pressure, but it does put that pressure, that thought pressure on your enemy, where they realize if you start getting those support units in front, or those tanky units in front of those battle droids as they spawn, and they don't handle it quick enough, they're going to be in big trouble. It's just so susceptible to a tauntaun or boomaballs that NOOCH really doesn't. That's why it comes at number 4, I guess. At number 3 are your flame towers. Now, the biggest benefit of the flame towers, they are a 3-cost tower. They have less health than the turbo laser or the particle beam by about a third, and they do less damage by about 10%, but it is area damage. So these flame towers are really good at taking care of those swarming units. The battle droids, the battalion of battle droids, the flock of porgs, the 3 porgs, the Ewoks. It's really good at handling those, although Ewoks will really get in some hits on it before they go down. The challenge with it is it doesn't attack air units, so it's really susceptible to your Durian or your probe droid, and it's more useful for the dark side, although, because there's more swarming units on the light side, but NOOCH has really seen that the best way to use this, and his pal Bertini uses this all the time, you drop down a BB-8 or an R2 unit, and you put the 2 flame towers in back, and then you just play defense the entire time. You defend, you defend, you defend, and when you get an opportunity, you put up a middle tower. So that's one way you can do it. You just spend 6 energies to get 2 rear towers, whereas it costs you 4 energy to get 1 rear tower for like a particle beam or a missile launcher. So that's the biggest benefit, is the cost and the fact that you can maybe play a defensive game with 2 of those flame towers in back and then have the extra energy to fight off attackers as they come in. So we'll post some videos on that strategy a little bit later. Coming in at number 2 is the Ewok Treehouse. Now, it has to be noted that the treehouse, the spawners, the treehouse and the battle droid factory really shouldn't be placed on their own. They need, generally speaking, a particle beam in front of them. So you have a particle beam maybe in the middle, and then an Ewok treehouse maybe on the right, and maybe on the left a double spawn or a single spawn. But the difference between the Ewok treehouse and the droid factory, one is that it costs 4, whereas the droid factory costs 3. But NOOCH still feels like versus a bomber run, you actually gain an advantage. If your opponent uses a bomber on that treehouse factory, they're using a 1-shot 4-energy bomber against a spawning tower. And there's probably already 1 or 2 Ewoks that have been spawned from that tower with the bomber run. The second part is that, and this is something NOOCH likes to do, if your opponent uses a bomber and you have 4 energy saved, just drop a Ewok treehouse on the other side. You know, get it up, get it going on the other side. That's so frustrating to an opponent that they use a bomber. That's another reason why NOOCH doesn't think the bomber is a good solution to the spawning towers, because you're spending the same amount of energy and they can just put another one up, and then you're back exactly where you were a minute ago. But the Ewok treehouse spawns Ewoks, 1 Ewok about every second, and those Ewoks will get shots in on every tower before they die. So they'll get a shot, they'll get probably a couple shots in on a flame tower, they'll get 1 in on the turbo laser, 1 in on the particle beam. And while that's only small chip damage, and it does make a difference over time. Over time, that little bit of damage, puts more and more pressure on your opponent, makes their towers weaker and weaker. The one tower it won't get to is the missile launcher, unless that missile launcher is zeroed in on something else and the Ewoks can get by. But again, you're in the same position. You want units in front of it to support it, to block the way for those Ewoks to die. So that's why the Ewok Treehouse comes in at number 2. It's a really effective tower, especially behind a particle beam. It can really put a lot of pressure on your opponents, and that's where it comes in. Coming in at number 1, the unequivocal, far and away, easy to identify, absolute bestest tower in the game, the particle beam. The particle beam has as much health as the turbo laser, the turbo tower, oh, we lost the name already. It's so unimportant we don't use it. The turbo laser, right? NOOCH can't remember. Anyway, the particle beam has just as much health as that thing, which is the most health of any tower, and it effectively handles the particle beam can take out a legendary and still have most of its health left. Now, you do have a challenge with Darth Vader and Luke where they're stunning that tower, and Yoda can protect himself, but he doesn't protect himself against the particle beam or any other towers. So those particle beams are really effective against legendaries. They're very effective against the big tanky units, and since they're effective against those big units, you just keep to the side the units that are effective against the small units. So you drop a particle beam in the middle, it handles the big units. Then you keep a Guavian or a Flame Trooper, or you keep your flock of porgs or your Ewoks, you keep your battalion of battle droids. You use those to fight off the swarms that might come at you, the other troops. You use the 1 energy guys, the 1 stormtrooper, the 2 battle droids, the 3 porgs. Use those to distract. So if a big unit is coming into your particle beam, drop your 1 energy unit to the opposite side of that big unit, and then your particle beam is free to wail away and eliminate that large legendary or tanky unit all on its own without interference. And if it's in the middle, that on the dark side, it's immune to the boomer balls. On the light side, you're still susceptible to a seismic charge. So you got to pay attention to that. But it's agreed among everybody. It's well known. The particle beam is the best tower. And if you had the particle beam at 4 or 5, at level 4 or 5, it's already better than like a flame tower or a missile launcher or a turbo laser. There, we got it. It's better than any of those at 2 or 3 stars higher. It's just a great tower, and you should be using it in the game to fight out those big units and save your units in your deck to get rid of the small units. Well, that's it. That's the tower rankings. Hopefully this ranking can help you understand how you're playing the game and which towers you want to be using. And while you're considering that, remember, NOOCH too good.